Hi everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show, where we watch old 16mm films and knock our webcam out of position. We try to spend our time getting it back. So we just watched what was titled Unknown NASA Footage. Now, it was unknown NASA footage by the person who labeled the can, but somebody pointed out, Kevin, I believe, in the comments that it was refreshing to see something that was unknown that NASA did. Well, given my experience when I was going to digitize all of the NASA film and video, this was a project that I was doing with the Internet Archive, and the plan was we put together a quote and we tried to figure out, we went to several space centers. I ended up going to like 3 or 4. And we looked at all the holdings, and they had several spreadsheets with estimations of how much material they had, but they had so much stuff. And you better believe there were just reels and cans of footage that nobody knew what it was. And what I learned is that each space center is its own separate little kingdom. And so each of them had their own approach to archiving stuff, and some of it wasn't very good. Like supposedly Kennedy Space Center was just in a closet somewhere where it leaked, and it wasn't very well climate controlled, and the person who was maintaining it had it all in like a handwritten notebook. And the thing is, for the Apollo program alone, there was a phenomenal amount of stuff that was shot. A lot of test footage, a lot of, not even stuff, like when they went up, yes, there was all that footage, but a lot of stuff was just we're going to watch this at Ames, we're going to watch this Saturn rocket fire, and we're going to watch it in slow motion, just to kind of see what's going on with the movement. There were all this test footage that was shot at Langley Space Center in Virginia, of where they were testing the lander falling, and there's so much stuff. And Langley even had stuff that predated NASA, as it was the Aeronautics Center, which was NACA, which was all about airplanes and the government research into airplane safety and technologies. So there's a lot of stuff that's unknown because they shot so much stuff and they have so many photos, and the people who could identify what they are dead. They're not there anymore. And the notes were just test A. So anyways, there's a lot of that out there. You just don't see it because nobody knows what it is. All right. So that was Skylab footage. Now that we watch it, and I don't know which mission it was, but Skylab footage is awesome on the outside and awesome on the inside too. There's all this zero gravity experiment stuff that they did. All right, let's watch the work of the atmosphere. Enjoy.
Moving restlessly and eternally over the face of the Earth is one of the most effective agents of gradation. It is the atmosphere. Powerful in its own erosive right, the air is even more important in forming and transporting great clouds, which precipitate their water vapor in the form of rain or snow. The atmosphere thus becomes an ally of water and ice, two other major agents of gradation. Wall crevices may freeze, thus aiding in mechanical disintegration of rocks. Freezing also facilitates gradation by prying up and loosening soil. On the other hand, in arid regions, rock surfaces crack under the stresses of alternate expansion. due to baking by day and cooling by night. The chemical action of moisture in the atmosphere enlarges these cracks and thus aids temperature changes to disintegrate the rock. In some localities, this atmospheric activity results in the peeling of rounded scales of solid rock. This process is called exfoliation. It may help to round rock masses as large as Half Dome in Yosemite. The sharp, fresh edges of many rocks and jagged peaks in cold regions and high altitudes are evidence that they have been broken by mechanical rather than by chemical activity. A striking result of such disintegration is seen in the huge talus slopes or tumbled masses of broken rock at the bases of some cliffs. But it is the chemical activity of the atmosphere, aided by moist, warm climate, that has disintegrated this rock. Note the resulting rock debris at the side. Even more spectacular are the results of the erosive action of wind, the Earth's atmosphere in motion. In dry regions, the wind carries along with it great quantities of sand, each grain an effective erosional tool. A highly magnified view of several sand grains shows their sharp cutting edges. Such hard quartz grains cut into solid rock when blown across its surface. Thus, the wind is always acquiring new tools in the form of debris which it cuts out of every rock it erodes. This sandblast abrades all exposed surfaces, and here inequalities in the rock's resistance to the atmosphere's agents have resulted in these rounded and honeycombed formations. This same sandblast action uncovers and scours the roots and the trunks of exposed trees. Note the sandblast effect on the bark. In arid regions, the lower portions of telegraph poles may be gnawed by the cutting teeth of wind-blown sand unless they are given protection. In some places, the wind sweeps the sand along and deposits it in great heaps called dunes. On the windward side, the dune rises gradually. But to the lee of its crest, the sand swirls and falls to form a steep slope. Changes in the direction of the wind result in the sands being cross-bedded. The story of the formation of a large dune is repeated thousands of times in the growth of miniature dunes or ripples common to its windward side. Dunes march forward in the direction taken by prevailing winds and may bury buildings or even forests. Since heavy vegetation on the windward side may check or stop the advance of dunes, there is a constant struggle between shifting sands and growing grasses, shrubs, and trees. Ages ago, the winds piled up the restless sand into dunes just as they do today. In many places, ancient sediments reveal cross-bedded dune structures and ripples whose sands long since cemented to form hard rock. Banks of less, hundreds of feet thick, occur in many places, notably along the Mississippi River. They were formed by the winds lifting fine dust-like particles of rock to great heights, carrying them for great distances, and then depositing them in such banks. Throughout dry regions and where soil has been laid bare, particularly through cultivation, wind sometimes gathers up the dusty soil and carries it along in thick, blinding clouds. Rising to great heights, this dust may gradually settle over a vast region hundreds of miles across. Here is the portion of North America affected by a single dust storm. Great dust storms also originate in the Sahara and move northward. One of these deposited a thick blanket of red dust over much of Central Europe. In a similar way, uprushing air currents carry vast quantities of dust from erupting volcanoes and transport the material great distances. Such dust from an explosion of Mount Katmai rose to a height of 15 miles and was carried completely around the Earth. The transporting of fine sand, dust, and ash is the most obvious direct work of the atmosphere. But the atmosphere is also essential to the gradational work of water. Clouds of water vapor carried high into the atmosphere may come in contact with cooler air. This lessens the cloud's ability to hold water. The moisture, gathering about minute floating dust particles, condenses to form small drops of water. These become so heavy that they fall to the earth as rain. The atmosphere also works hand in hand with surface water. The light edges of this common rock, largely composed of feldspar mineral, have been chemically altered to form clay. Under the microscope, the feldspar appears coarse and crystalline, in contrast to the fine, powdery texture of the clay. Near the surface of the ground, carbon dioxide and moisture from the air decompose certain rocks to form clays and sands. Rainwater, descending from the surface, transports the fine clay downward through the coarser soil. In this way, beds of clay have been building up since the Earth first developed an atmosphere. In ordinary soils, therefore, sandy material predominates near the surface, whereas clays accumulate in the lower subsoil. By its depositional and chemical action, the atmosphere thus helps to create the soil. Fertile soils sustain plant growth, without which animals could not exist. And both plants and animals depend on the air for their very life breath. We have seen that this gaseous, earth-enfolding blanket, the atmosphere, quietly causes important chemical changes. Its great erosive work is apparent as it cuts with sharp-edged particles of sand. We sense its transportational importance when the air is choked with dust. We see its relation to the work of water as we watch rain fall. And we all benefit from its significant role in the formation of soil. Without the atmosphere, all things would disappear from the surface of our Earth. Like the moon, it would wheel eternally along its orbit, baked by day and frozen by night, a barren, lifeless, uneroded sphere.
Narrator was James Brill, our good old friend who narrated almost all the Encyclopedia Britannica films for at least the first 10 years, it feels like, with occasional guest stars of a woman narrator or a dude. Let's see. So behind me, as we are watching 16mm films, I have behind me the scanner, and I have to change the name of this film. The can was Journey Quest for SR. And I'm like, what is that? Journey Quest for SR. So I put it on the telecine, and it's Journey for Self-Reliance. So let's see if we can figure out what this is all about. I was just typing. Enjoy.
Well, I'll call you when I get out. If I'm not out in 2 weeks, you'll know where to look for me. Take it easy. Be good. When I heard Vaughn's car driving off down the road, I knew it was going to be the last man-made sound I would hear for 2 weeks. It was late fall, and I was setting out to cross the Sierra Nevada on foot. I've loved these mountains since I was a kid, and I'd been planning this trip for a long time. You have to plan. You can't just get up one morning and head off into the hills, not if you're used to harvesting your food in supermarkets. You have to know the ways of the people who'd called these mountains home, how they gathered food, made tools, navigated by the sun and by the stars, how they took what they needed from the hills without destroying them. So I studied for a long time, and I made a lot of shorter trips for practice. Then one day I knew I was ready. I packed a knife, a few tools, and one thin dime for that phone call I'd be making when I got across. Of course, I still had doubts. I had 70 miles of wilderness, icy rivers, and deep snow to cross, on foot, with no food, no matches, and no compass. But this was a challenge I had to face, and I wanted to do it alone. There's one thing about living in the wilderness. Life gets reduced to very simple things, like making a shelter or finding food or just staying warm. Sometimes it seems like you're spending a lot of time just taking care of basics, but the rewards are simple and immediate too. A couple of hours spent on making a good shelter, for instance, can mean the difference between a good night's sleep and shivering all night on a bed of rocks and pine cones. The same is true for finding food. You've got to give it time. The Shoshone Indians used to catch fish with their hands, just by reaching in under creek banks or rocks, stroking the fish's belly, and pulling it out. Of course, you have to know fish and know where they'd be likely to sleep or to hide. And you can't be squeamish about sticking your hands blindly into slimy places. But you don't have to be faster than the fish, just smarter. And remember, you hold the element of surprise. Sometimes. But the important thing is not to give up. You've got to believe you can do it. Starting a fire with a fire bow looks easy until you've tried it once. and then it seems impossible until you've actually made it work for yourself. It takes dry tinder, a good fire set, and a lot of faith. You've just got to believe it really can be done. After a few failures the first night, I found myself wishing I'd brought along some matches. But I'd done it before, and I knew I could do it again if I just kept trying. It only takes a single spark and a very gentle touch. Until that first night, I never really knew how much a friend a fire can be. That little circle of light was like a home in the middle of the wilderness. I found myself wondering just what I was doing there. I felt like I was a million miles away from the life I was used to. Most of all, I missed the sounds of other people, and my imagination turned every sound I could hear into a threat. Of course, the mountains weren't really threatening me. They were ignoring me. Maybe that's why I felt so alone. The next morning, I couldn't even remember what had bothered me so much the night before. I was excited all over again and could hardly wait to get started. But leaving a campsite without putting things back the way you found them is like carving your initials in a tree or painting your name on a rock. Someone once called that leaving a monument to yourself. So I covered up all my traces, and I still got an early start. Ahead was a whole mountain range to cross, and less than 2 weeks to do it in. The farther away you get from the city, the more you begin to see and hear and taste and smell the wilderness. After a few days, you can pick out small things that you might have missed only a week before. I remember day after day of walking and feeling my feet stop aching and my body grow stronger. Then one day, I realized I wasn't in a hurry anymore. After about a week, the only companions I needed were the sounds of the mountains and my own thoughts. But I was alone, and I realized that more than ever when I hit my first real obstacle. The Kern River was fuller than I hoped it would be that late in the year. I couldn't find a place to walk across, and there wasn't any way around it, so that left me with two choices. Cross it right there, or turn around and go home. And that was really no choice at all. Whatever happened, I was on my own to make it across. Sometimes you've just got to take a chance and trust yourself. I thought about building a raft, but that would have taken a lot of time, and I didn't really think it would be necessary. All I had to do was hang on to my end of the rope, and I would be washed down and across the river like a giant pendulum. My big worry was the water temperature. It was about 40 degrees, and that's cold. It can cramp your muscles and make you numb. So I had to get across quickly, or I'd lose control and wind up going for a swim in the rapids. Finally, I secured everything as well as I could. I thought about the river, how strong the current was, and how cold it would be. And then there was nothing left to do but get in. Once you've gone through something you were afraid of, the idea of doing it again doesn't seem as frightening. I didn't mind the idea of crossing another river, but as I sat there shivering and trying to get dry, I kept thinking, next time I'm going to build a raft. I camped in one place for a couple of days to gather food and to get ready for the high mountains ahead. When your life depends on the things you do and how you do them, you've got to take the time to do each thing the best you can. I wasn't looking forward to spending a night in the snow, but I figured that if I was prepared, I could get across the deep snow in one long day of walking. What I needed took a combination of time and a little mountain-grown ingenuity. All it took was willow branches, yucca leaves, and an idea. That's the amazing thing about living in the wilderness. You find out you can do things you never thought you could. I wasn't sure I could build snowshoes until I did it. At first I hoped I wouldn't need them, but when I was done, I couldn't wait to try them out. You haven't felt real solitude until you've been alone, surrounded by the silence and stillness of mountain snow. I remember thinking, I'm really here, walking in snowshoes that I built, across snow that no other human being will ever see. I enjoyed having it all to myself. It took me almost a full day's walking to realize that I wasn't going to be out of the snow before nightfall. The clouds began to look very threatening, and I still had miles to go. I headed downhill to see if I could find a protected place where the snow might not be so deep. It takes more than a campfire to stay warm on a cold, snowy night in the mountains. I decided to build a fire bed, a technique the Indians use to survive in the winter. The idea is to sink stones into the ground, heat them until they're red hot, then cover them with dirt. It takes time and it takes a lot of hard work, but if your life depends on it, you don't mind the work as much. And anyway, the digging keeps you warm. Sometimes I imagined myself frozen stiff, being discovered after the first spring thaw. But part of me kept saying, trust yourself. You know what you have to do, and you're doing it. They say the person who is likely to survive in the wilderness is the one who believes he will and takes some sort of direct action. If you think you're not going to make it, you probably won't. I decided then and there that I was going to make it. That first warm day in the hills 2 weeks back, I'd seen some cattails growing, and I picked them for an evening just like this one. I needed some way to keep my body from losing heat while I waited for the fire bed to be ready. The seeds inside worked just like down. I kept thinking, just one more night. Make it through tonight, and tomorrow you can be sleeping in a warm bed. As the night got colder, it helped to have that to look forward to. A firebed can't be hurried. You have to wait at least an hour before the dirt heats up, but it seems more like 10 when you're cold. I kept going over everything in my mind. Did I heat up the stones enough? Did I cover them with enough dirt, or too much? For the bed to stay warm all night, everything had to be perfect. The steam rising from the dirt told me the firebed was ready. I was surrounded by snow. The wind was blowing. It was below freezing. And I was going to stay warm all night. The firebed stayed warm right through the next morning, and I was in no hurry at all to get out of it. It was my last day in the Sierra. I'd stopped counting the days, and it was almost a surprise to realize that my trip would soon be over. In just a few hours, I'd be standing on the highway, waiting for Vaughn to pick me up. Suddenly I was in a hurry again. I wanted to be there, on the other side of the mountains. 2 weeks ago, I hadn't really been sure that I could make it. But now I knew that I had met the challenge I'd set for myself. and I felt it was true more and more with every step I took. It was going to take a while to get used to cars and people and city things again. I'd come a long way in the last 2 weeks, and I didn't want to lose what I'd found in the mountains. But I wanted to go home now and find out if this feeling would last. This feeling that, one step at a time, I could make it over anything.
Right. Yeah. So that, you know, how many reality shows on Discovery were copying the same thing, or YouTube channels, same thing. Like, we're gonna go out into the wilderness for X amount of days and see how we can survive with just a pocket knife and a dime. Fascinating. And yes, I'm sure there's lots of cheating going on there, because you had a film crew there. So the film crew were probably staying in a trailer not too far from where the guy was, or, you know, something. Let's watch this film on civil defense, public information. I don't think I've shown this one. It's animated, which I love. So here it is: public defense, or civil defense, public information. Enjoy.
A good information program consists of delivering the right message from the right source to the right channel, to the right time, to the right audience.
The first requirement of a good information program is that it must be completely clear. So let's try that again, Al.
A good information program consists of delivering the right message from the right source through the right channel at the right time to the right audience.
That's better. Protection of the people in time of emergency is the fundamental purpose of civil defense. Many people are confused about the facts of the nuclear threat. Research reports show that confusion exists about the nature of fallout, its detection and measurement, about the relationship of blast, heat, and radiation from nuclear weapons, about the physical effects of radiation on human life, animals, and plants, about the National Fallout Shelter Program, community shelter planning, and many other subjects related to the nuclear danger. Confused people will not support any program. Persons engaged in the civil defense information effort must see to it that civil defense is clearly explained in terms of what kind of protection it can offer in city, town, or county. This can be accomplished by simple, straightforward communications. The case for civil defense is a good one. Your job, get it across to the public. The right message may be chosen from a wide variety of civil defense informational material on every aspect of the subject. Pamphlets and other publications cover the field thoroughly. Emphasize the material you think may be most important in your community. If you are in a farm area, stress home shelters and civil defense information about animals and crops. In large metropolitan areas, information about public shelters is more appropriate. In any community, word about the shelter plan is vital. For particular situations, technical information from manuals may be briefed and restated in easy-to-understand language for the general audience. Reports of legislative hearings have literally dozens of excellent quotes for use in explaining national civil defense programs. Many audiovisual aids have been developed to explain the purposes and objectives of civil defense. 16-millimeter motion pictures on most civil defense subjects offer interesting and dramatic material for use in public presentations or on local television stations. 1-minute theatrical trailers are available for showing in local movie theaters. Transcriptions and spot announcements may be obtained for radio presentations. There are newspaper mats, posters, billboard material, and material for exhibit at state or county fairs and other public gathering places. These and other public information materials are prepared and are obtainable from the Directorate for Public Information in the Office of Civil Defense. Considerable information may be drawn from the Civil Defense Adult Education Program materials. Color slides, color film strips, or black and white prints make effective visual presentations. People want to know the authority for the information you are giving them. Statements on civil defense made by top government officials can be used to establish authoritative source. The Secretary of Defense, the Chief of Staff for Army, Navy, and Air Force have all gone on record backing the Fallout Shelter program. Their statements and those of prominent civil authorities in national life contain sober factual evaluations of civil defense. These can be used effectively in a well-planned information program. But the people in your community not only want to know about national civil defense in general, they want to know about their local shelter plan that affects them personally. It must be made clear to them that their local government has two basic civil defense tasks: to take all action necessary that would contribute to the saving of lives in an emergency, and to develop its community shelter plan so that it can advise or instruct people on where to go and what to do in the emergency situation. You represent your local government. When you have something to say about your local plan, enlist the support of local people in your community whose words carry weight with the public. Businessmen, educators, civil leaders, labor and industrial representatives. When the public has confidence in the source of civil defense information, they may be more inclined to pitch in and cooperate with the program. Never say anything to anyone off the record.
Just between the two of us, strictly confidential. I wouldn't want this to get around.
Everything about civil defense is on the record and backed up by good authority. Make no vague reports or statements that may be misquoted or misinterpreted. They could be harmful to civil defense programs. Credibility of source must be established early in your information program if the public is going to believe your further output. It is important that people speaking for civil defense should speak as authorities only in their own areas of knowledge. For example, the nuclear scientist is not necessarily an expert in sociology, and the sociologist is no more an expert in nuclear physics.
Hi, Sam. How's the program going in Centerville?
Seems to be shaping up. How about yours?
Not so hot.
What's wrong?
Everything. Newspapers, radio, they're just not buying civil defense.
Doesn't look to me like you're sending anything over to them.
What's the use? When I do send it over, they're always changing the stories around. They keep spelling my name wrong, too. It's Allen with one L, I tell them. Comes out with two L's every time.
One L, two L's, what's the difference? And let them work over the stories if they want to. Important thing is to get our message across. How they do it is their business.
Half the time, they don't even use the stuff I send out.
Just how do you go about getting your material out, Al? Give me a for instance.
Well, I get somebody on the phone down there.
What do you mean you get somebody? Don't you know anybody at your newspaper or radio station by name?
No, I don't. Anyway, I tell this character, whoever he is, that I got some papers on civil defense I'm sending down, and will he use this stuff?
Stuff, huh? Is that how you put it?
It's just a manner of speaking.
You put it like that, you know what they're going to do with it, don't you?
Well, you can't expect me to work up a sweat about it. We're not selling Miss America, you know.
Look, friend, we're selling something everybody needs. Only lots of folks don't know it yet. Our job in civil defense is to make them know.
But I've tried. How can I?
Take the trouble to make some personal contacts with your newspaper and radio station. Get acquainted with the people who can help the program. They've got to understand that you're really interested in civil defense.
What if got a lot of other news to put out they think is more interesting?
Then get an interesting angle on your news. There's lots of opportunities. You got to be on the lookout for them. Information is their business. Make them want yours. You do it upright. Make it newsy so they'll want to read it. They'll use it. Once you get them believing in civil defense, they'll be coming to you for material.
Say, maybe you got something there. Think I'll get busy on this pile of stuff. Excuse me, material. Give me a hand, will you, Sam?
Civil defense information piled up on your desk isn't going to help anybody. If it's worth communicating, make sure you get it out through the right channel. In addition to your local news media, there may be other channels for information in your community which you can use. Schools, post office, banks, community organizations. Check up on them. Tailor your civil defense information to fit the needs of the media that will be using it. Public service time on radio and television is available, but on a highly competitive basis. Your material must be well prepared and of immediate interest. Getting your material heard at the right time may mean the difference between the success or failure of your program. And in time of emergency, it may be the difference between lives saved and lives lost. But remember, news is old hat quick. Don't wait to write a story if time is of the essence. Call if you're expecting public participation in response to your message. Allow time enough for it, and repeat the message as frequently as you can. Avoid conflict with events which absorb a large share of mass media interest, such as major holiday periods. Don't try to fight Santa Claus for your public's attention. Stay clear of election periods or any time you know big things are happening that would distract from interest in civil defense. On the other hand, tie in with events that might provide a fertile ground for civil defense information. Don't saturate press, radio, or publications with one long story after another. Time your output for length and variety. And don't be a personal publicity hound. If your local media people ever get the idea that all you care about is getting names spelled correctly, you won't have much success. Expect your copy to be edited. Professional media people may prefer to develop their own copy style, or they may see a more pertinent story in your material than you have indicated. Your objective is to get your story told. How they do it is their business. Public information personnel in civil defense will frequently be called upon to speak before special groups, such as educators, organization heads, clergymen, and civic groups. In all presentations, be prepared on your subject matter. And be sure you talk the language your audience will understand.
Now, in nuclear fusion, a pair of light nuclei unite to form a nucleus of a heavier atom. An example is the fusion of the hydrogen isotope known as deuterium, or heavy hydrogen. Under suitable conditions, two deuterium nuclei may combine to form the nucleus of a heavier element, helium, with a release of energy. The fusion of all the nuclei present in only 1 pound of deuterium would release roughly the same amount of energy as the explosion of 26,000 tons of TNT.
And it would take about 26,000 tons of TNT to wake up an audience after a speech like that. Know your audience and keep your material in line with the group it's intended for. Keep in mind that your civil defense public information program should Provide the public with information about civil defense at national, state, and local levels of government. Provide the public with life-saving and survival information and instructions that you have prepared or obtained in connection with the community shelter plan. And provide for necessary emergency information readiness in the event of emergency. Basic steps in day-to-day civil defense information activity are to create public awareness of the problem, to develop material for input to the various media, to follow up repeatedly to make sure your material is being used. The job of civil defense public information is to convince rather than to command, by all means possible. The federal government uses all of the mass media and provides guidance in working with them on the civil defense program. Federal cooperation with national organizations and commercial agencies has also been developed. Use these contacts wherever they will help your information program. But remember, first you have to know who these contacts are and what they can do for you and the program. It's your business to find out. Expect disinterest and even opposition, and try to overcome them. Don't get discouraged. Maybe you can get Miss America to make a statement on civil defense. If you can, be sure you get it in pictures. Now, let's have that definition of a good information program again.
A good information program consists of delivering the right message from the right source through the right channel at the right time to the right audience.
I think you've got it, Al.
Wow. So from a civil defense film standpoint, this is fascinating. This is not made for the general public. This is made for people dealing with the general public. And as we have seen, public information about a potential health disaster crisis is very important. A unified voice, etc. And this is what this was trying to do. The fact that it has a character who sounds a lot like Mr. Magoo, it's crazy, because this is the second time we've run across a Mr. Magoo-esque voice that was not voiced by Jim Backus, but somebody else. He must have been super popular that everybody was trying to mimic him. But, man, I love watching films like that, because it's not meant for the general public. It's meant for a very niche group. And we have some other films like that are meant for people that are coordinating and doing things related to a fallout shelter or a given town or city's response to a nuclear attack. So this is the bureaucracy of how to how our civilization can survive such a thing. The bureaucracy is the most important thing. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you. I think it was Kevin gave us some money by hitting the super thanks button on YouTube's little button in the comments. You can also hit the like button, the subscribe button, notification. I saw some new faces. Thank you for joining us. I don't know how you found us, but I appreciate you watching and your eyeballs, borrowing them for about an hour. We'll be back again tomorrow, Thursday, and I'll show you some more stuff. It'll be great. You can also get us coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are other ways to support us. Or you can just watch more videos at our YouTube channel, which have ads on them that basically, I don't know, it's based on something that you watched in the past, and, you know, so you don't have to click on anything, but just watch an ad. That'll put a penny in our piggy bank. Yeah, everybody have a great rest of your day. As always, I heart films, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.